primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast Super One. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
In today's episode 218 of Podcast Super One, youtube.com/@2for1 studios. Guys and gals, it's the best place to consume the content. If you didn't know, listeners, and you probably did not, we are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located at 4047 East Kill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas. There they have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course, special guest appearances throughout the year.
Kapow.
Kapow. Daniel, it's 218, and we are talking a movie that I did not have on my radar or list to talk about this year.
Mm-hmm.
I anticipated this time of the year we would be talking about The Penguin, Agatha, All Along.
And we will. Those are coming
and
up.
we will. Maybe Lord of the Rings, which didn't happen, right, at the moment, even though the finale just aired. But
We'll see.
My point is, I didn't anticipate this at all until you brought it up in a text message. And you had watched it and told me your thoughts on it. And I was like, okay. And then I had put it on my back burner of like potentially to watch when I get to it, if I see it, whatever, if I'm reminded again. And then, of course, the shortlist started coming out for Jon Stewart for HBO Max's or just HBO's Lanterns TV show.
And I don't know if it's on the podcast, but it was during or after the Hacks podcast. I told you, you should watch it. And while you're watching it, I said, the main guy, I want you to be asking yourself, Jon Stewart? It was a quote. That's exactly what I said. And literally 2 weeks later, he's on the short list. And I felt pretty proud of my prediction there.
You should be proud of it. That means that you deserve to be on this podcast, Daniel.
I've earned my place.
You've earned your place now. You can start fan cast pretty accurately now. So, yes, because of the short list, because of all that happening, I was like, okay, I'm going to check this out. I think I told you, I'm going to check it out today, actually, because of this. And I ended up watching it when everyone was asleep, taking naps. And I had a really good time with it overall. You know, I had a few issues, particularly towards the second half.
Sure.
But overall, watching it, it's nice going into a movie when you don't know anything about it. There's no preconceived expectations, really. And you haven't seen a single frame of the movie or whatever. I think there's more to talk about, but I want your general impressions.
Yeah, I mean, it was, a late night on a weekend, and I was kind of staying up later, just doing my own thing, and I just was getting on Netflix, probably going to watch something different, and it was kind of the main, when Netflix does kind of a full page advertisement when they're having a new movie or TV show, and it looked good, and I saw that it was the same director as The Green Room, that Patrick Stewart thriller horror from a few years ago. You've seen that, haven't you? Green Room?
I have not.
Okay, that's surprising to me. That feels like right up your alley.
I know exactly what it is. Is there one also called Green something? Green something? Blue something. There's like Green Room and there's something else.
Is it the same director as let's see, Jeremy Saulnier?
Let's see here, listeners.
Blue Ruin.
Blue Ruin.
Shit, this is wild. I saw Blue Ruin. My family has a cabin up in up in Magazine, and for a long time we didn't have like internet or cable or satellite. It was like just local channels, up on a mountain. And so you've got like 4 channels. But I remember being up there one time and just turning it on, and like it was on like some random local channel. Blue Ruin was playing, and I think it got decent reviews, but it's not like it was like a hit movie or anything. But it was good, and I remember liking it. But then same guy that did Green Room and Hold the Dark. I guess I haven't seen that though.
I didn't realize he had done Green Room. But yeah, go on.
And so anyway, so I jumped right in, and man, you're right. It was so nice to watch a movie that could have been bad, but was surprisingly good in a way that's like, it's tackling kind of a hot button topic, relatively unknown actors, the main villain. He was, Don Johnson was probably the most well-known. James Cromwell was in there too.
I was fixing to say,
and
you said
and
unknown actors. I was like, whoa.
well,
Rocket?
the leads were unknown, more
Sure.
unknowns, right? Like the and then you had from The Office, you had Roy from The Office was in there as like the
Yes.
main bad cop. But you know, relatively unknown leads that were great. They were kind of the stars, both of them in ways. They both shone really bright against these better known actors. I thought the filmmaking was really good, like just really solid cinematography. There was nothing that was like mind blowing, but every frame just felt full and interesting and had a lot of depth. Everything was lit really nicely. It was all lit very naturally, but it just felt like good, solid kind of, not by the numbers I want to say, but just like kind of classic filmmaking that I really appreciated about it. And then, yeah, I think the ending, while to some degree maybe unsatisfying or quick, is really interesting in kind of just the context of like a larger conversation about law enforcement and corruption and abuse of power and all, and like the system, you know, problems within the law enforcement and the justice system is really interesting in the way it handles that. And yeah, and then I thought, you know, Aaron Pierre was just fantastic. I mean, he was badass. You know what I mean? He didn't kill anyone, but he was freaking awesome the whole time, and you felt like he could have killed anyone at any point. He just chose not to, which was a cool way to do this kind of Rambo-esque story, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, you said it right there, and it's something I haven't looked online or anything about this, but it immediately has Rambo, particularly First Blood ties. Have you seen the first Rambo movie, First Blood?
Yeah.
Have you seen First Blood Part 2?
I doubt it. I don't think so.
Oh, dude, it's one of the best. It's got I said this before, it's got the meanest score / soundtrack of all time. The meanest score of all time. When you listen to it, you're like, damn, it's mean in here now. Okay, so back to Rambo comparison. Yeah, of course, let's kind of recap this story real quick. It's about a man who is coming to a small town to pay the bail of his cousin. And on his way to pay the said bail, he is stopped by two cops. One of them, you mentioned Roy from The Office.
David Denman, if we want to be.
David Denman, yeah. And he's done some similar roles, I think, this in terms of like just the gruff, just not the guy.
He either plays like a dad, like a total like kind of like messy, can't get his life together dad, or like a bad cop type character. Those are like the roles he plays these days. It feels like.
At least that's the impression. So they stop him, and by stopping him, they mean they actually like run him off the road and flip him, and he's off his bicycle. Yeah, right. It's a bicycle. Yeah, and so it immediately becomes a very gross look at like the worst version of a cop ever, and someone who's not only attacking someone who is black, but also attacking someone that has done absolutely nothing wrong, right? And someone that is cooperative, and they're doing all these different things with no type of information or any reason of suspect at all to take his belongings from him, which is the catalyst of the movie. They end up taking his bail money for his cousin. Yes. And so the rest of the movie is him trying to get that bail money back, as well as deal with the rest and the entirety of the corrupt police force. Right. And it kind of goes from there. I think that's the first half of the movie. The second half is a little different. Again, I think the first half rung true to me more than the second half did. The first half, it just flows so well. I think it's a really tight, whatever it is, hour or so. It's, you know, whatever that first half of the movie is. It's like exactly an hour. Yeah. Yeah. And I think I also want to highlight something here that I think is really cool about the movie at another kind of meta level is that you're right. When he gets like caught by these cops, he is, you know, what is later revealed, basically like a special operative in the military, like the highest of the highest training and like you don't fuck with these guys kind of guy. You know what I mean? And so when these cops are like, you know, basically like trying to get him to do something to justify them taking the money or arresting him, they're trying to provoke him, like kind of gaslighting him and stuff. He knows
all the law. So he's like questioning them. Well, why did you do this? No, you can't look in my bag because of this. Did you do that? Like he's showing the audience, this is how you can talk to a cop if you know what you're talking about. If you know the law,
Sure.
This is how you can do it in a way that protects you and that is respectful. Hey, you can actually know your rights and guard them, and you don't have to be an asshole about it. And like, here's how you do it. That's a great example. Now he's in a situation where it was the cops didn't give a shit. Right. But I think also, when we get later into the movie, when they're dealing with, because, kind of a core part of why he can't get the money back is because these cops are using basically like this law.
Spoilers.
Yeah. This law that was created in like mob days to like seize like drug money and stuff like that. Basically, they found a way to go through the system in a way where they can basically seize large amounts of cash and don't have to prove it had any illegal ties to it, and can just like basically take it, right? Yeah. And so, he's following the rules. He ends up getting help from this paralegal who was great too. Her name was Anna Sophia Robb. Her name was Summer in the movie. She was fantastic. I thought she was really great. She kind of reminded me of the lead girl in House of Cards. I can't remember her name right off the top of my head. She kind of had a similar vibe to her. It's him basically trying to work within the system legally to get his money back, right? He's trying to go about it by the book. I mean, technically, these officers aren't breaking the law in what they're doing. It's shady, it's immoral, it's gross, but they're flying right underneath the red tape, And I think that's really, the movie could have worked without all that in a way, right? He could have known his rights, but been a little bit more assholery, and it still would have been unjustifiable what they did to him. It could have been him just like trying to get the money back from a corrupt police force in other ways. But I really like that it was educational, honestly, in that way. And then it kind of was like, hey, this is it. I mean, this actually happens. And maybe I actually didn't look into it. I'm assuming the way it presents it, it feels like, okay, this is a real laws and this kind of shit happens.
No, it definitely is. Yeah, that's a way to back in the day, it was a way to handicap people, obviously, that the cops knew were bad or were gangsters or whatever. Yeah, that is a real thing. And there's all kinds of weird stuff like that that is different from state to state, even town to town in a lot of ways. So one thing also I think is kind of interesting here, and you're right on all those accounts where he's working in the system to do this correctly, and it's not really until they start pushing him in a really bad way where he starts kind of doing more physical things. But one thing I kind of want to cap all this off, and this is all spoiler stuff, but this kind of gives context to kind of the rest of the whole picture, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not condoning anything the cops are doing. Obviously, what they're doing is absolutely horrible and like the worst thing. Is the worst way the system can go.
Right.
But their reasoning in the way the writing does this, I think, is interesting and does give it more nuance. And the way they kind of talk about this is that their precinct in their town, they're like the only cops or the only precinct that still has the most of or all of their original employed cops. And all the other surrounding towns and surrounding communities, they're losing all their police force and they're losing their protectors and the people that are kind of keeping the law at bay. And that's because they're losing their funding. And so it's been this workaround thing. They're using the money, like you said earlier, to fund not only their wallets, to fund the police force, but they even putting it back into the community for charities and those kind of things. So they claim.
And you remember right after he said that, and he said like, yeah, and also like what
margarita,
a $600 sound system or whatever it was.
Yeah, no, it was a $600 margarita machine. And and he said that, well, you have to build morale, is what Don Johnson's character said. And no, I'm not excusing that. And that's where their logic starts to crack, right? Where they're doing these great things.
There's this believable thing where it's like, this probably did start with good intentions, right?
Sure.
That what they're doing, they probably are doing with, to some degree, at least initially started doing with good intentions. But I think
to actual criminals,
right? The events of this movie show that they've gotten out of control with it.
This is we're years past the moment where someone made
Yes.
a bad judgment call and then no one called them on it and it felt good and they got something
Right.
out of it. And so they
Exactly.
kept
It's become a
going.
habit.
It's
Yes.
become a habit, and
I
now this is
I think the other thing that just to set context too is that like for Aaron Pierre Paul's Terry Richmond, the reason his urgency is I feel like they did it really well. They motivated his urgency. So yes, he's coming to get his cousin out on bail. That he got, what does he got caught for? It was possession. He got caught with some weed in an illegal state, but he lives in a legal state. It was kind of like, it's what it is. That's just that is a real kind of catch-22 that some people get in at this point, especially if you're a medical user. It's like, do you leave your medicine at home to like go see your family? You wouldn't if it was any other medicine. Anyway,
especially your extended family. What? Go on.
Right. But then the reason he has to get him out now and quickly is because his cousin was an informer on a big gang, like a big nationwide gang. And he's like, if he gets in there, he informed, he was like one of them and he ratted. If he gets in there, he won't last long. Somebody's going to recognize him and he's going to get jumped. He's going to get killed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so he has a very you really empathize with him. It's like, you understand. I think, I guess the climax of the movie in some ways is that moment where he approaches the police station and it's just that girl and the chief in there, right? And the chief it's so badass. It's amazing. The chief comes out and he's like, I don't think you know who I am. And he starts like,
I knew as soon as he walks out there, they're on the computer typing
it was really well done. It was in the trailer, actually.
It's a little cliche, but that's a classic, that's classic, the way it's structured. But go on.
And then when he starts telling him what the acronyms stand for, because you're right, they do say that, but you don't know what that means. Even when they're like, he's STPR, they're just spelling. You're like, what the fuck was that mean? And so then he starts, saying what each of these means, and he's like, the last letter, what is it? Is E, like execute, or I can't remember.
It wasn't execute, but it was basically like, I think it was something along the lines of it was elevate, is what it was, right? Elevate.
Let's see. I'm gonna look it up. Let's see.
Yeah, look it up. I feel like it was something like elevate, something in the sense that wasn't execute. I don't think. I think it was elevate.
He's a close combat.
We're looking it up, listeners.
Yeah.
For all you. Yeah, he's a close quarters combat, and it doesn't say his actual thing here. Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those things that this can go. Those kind of moments where they're explaining what they are, and like the people are finding out what they are. It's the classic like John Wick scenario, right? Where I say classic John Wick. John Wick took this from other tons of classic movies. So it's funny. John Wick is 10 years old now, by the way. Let that sink in.
Yeah, that's wild.
But it's the same thing. Like, oh, you killed a guy's dog. Oh, this guy's actually the Baba Yaga, right? This guy is the boogeyman, and this guy's going to kill all of us now. So same situation here. And it's been done a lot in the past, and this could have went sideways in the way they told it in the structure. But they you're right. It did it in a way that it's fun, and I like those moments. Like, it's something. It's a cliche, but when they're done correctly, they're fun and enjoyable.
Yeah. So it was PACE was the acronym. Is primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. So basically. And he didn't even say I don't even know if he said that. It just brings me to E or whatever. But the action scene that unfolds was kind of felt very. I mean, I know we've seen action scenes like that, but I don't know if it almost felt Batman-esque to me, I guess, in that he goes into this close combat de-arming everyone. He keeps tackling them and then taking their guns apart and unloading all the ammo, or you know what I mean, basically subduing them without doing any long-term harm or any real harm. It's just such a badass sequence, and it really is he feels like a superhero in this movie when he does that kind of shit. It feels superhero-esque.
I have a little pushback. I mean, I like about 95% of it. Yeah, it's a QCQ, close quarters CQC, close quarters combat. Got the backwards there, and I think most of the time it works. It's it's enjoyable, especially whenever a protagonist breaks apart a gun or whatever and takes apart the ammo. Especially, it's always fun too when people pop rounds out of a magazine because it's actually not super easy to do. It's actually kind of hard to do, and as in really, I think it's pretty hard to do actually, fast. And so that's all fun and dandy. I do think some of the stuff towards the end, it feels a little slow because he's doing a lot of groundwork, a lot of takedown stuff.
Sure.
And it only works, and they do narratively justify it with like the smoke at the end. No, we're jumping ahead, but just talking about the fighting, I think it would have been cool to be a little more hands and less takedowns and less like UFC kind of stuff. So like it's what it kind of felt like to me. But anyway, I agree with you overall that it makes him like a badass, and that's their objective in this storytelling wise, and they accomplished that. I think they did a really good job, and also like all the cops, the way they react to him, it's understood that he is in command and that he's someone that they can't mess with. What's interesting from that moment, that's basically like the middle point of almost the middle point of the movie. Almost, right?
Yeah.
Because because spoilers for people, they do get to the hospital. He's taken because his cousin gets hurt.
Yeah.
He's taken to the hospital. And what's interesting is that this is where the movie starts like kind of throwing me for a curveball. Is that Don Johnson and the other cop, I think it's Roy, actually, maybe Roy.
Yeah, it was.
They show up to give him back his money, I think, right? And
they take him there.
they take him there. Yes, they take him there.
So remember, he gets bail. He takes bail to the court and submits, like basically gets away from them, submits bail, and then is like, he surrenders. Right?
Yeah, he surrenders.
So he's in the back of. So they take him out of this like hole that looks like a torture hole at first, or like this old rusty house thing, and they just put him in the back of a truck, like a transport truck, and he has no idea where he's going. He gets out. It's Don Johnson and Roy. And they're like, basically like, we need to tell you something. And they like, we're not going to, I can't remember if they uncuffed him first or not, but it was essentially like, we need you to, it was this really cool, where it was a sad moment. We're like, we need to tell you something and you're not going to like it. We need you to be calm. We need to make
Which is fascinating because of what they just did to each other 5 minutes prior. That's why it's interesting.
It's interesting because it's like, they've realized how deeply they fucked up now. Like, it's like, not only did we underestimate this guy, we got his cousin killed.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting though is that they could have killed him right then. That's what's interesting to me. On a practical level.
At the hospital, no. When he was
they didn't have to take him to the hospital. They could have took him somewhere else and killed him. Like they could have said that. They could have said that he pulled a gun on us and we had to act. Because I mean, we just saw 5 minutes prior he had a gun on Don Johnson. And there's other people with guns on him as he was walking to the police. Like it's like it's like automatic. Like what movie where that? Yeah, what movie where that happens, or even real life where the other cops don't automatically kill him?
I thought the same thing.
Just because, not even caring about the law.
The only reason I can think is that they would think it would bring way too much heat, and they don't want to get noticed. Is essentially like if a Marine black ops specialist dies in our town in police custody, there's gonna be some kind of investigation, probably.
Solid reason, and you're padding out the actual logic of the world. Yes, I'm saying that makes sense, and I agree with that. But what's interesting is that the writer here, I think it's the director, right? They decided not to go that route. They that's super unusual to let him free after what just happened.
Yeah,
and giving the villains some nuance and some a little smarts too at the same time.
You're right. But you're right. It is interesting that I guess their reasoning is like we've like if he gets away mad, what could stop him from tearing all this down? You know what I mean?
think it's a little irrational because I think for that reason they would kill him because
you may be right. Yeah.
Once he finds out that his cousin's dead because of what they did, essentially because of their actions caused him not to get bail and to go to this other prison first, right? So I think it's why it's interesting. I don't know.
Right. No, it's very interesting, and I think
it's not bad. I think it just well, I was just like, oh, this is like not what I was
It's
expecting.
not what I expected
we're
either.
We're only an hour in. Okay.
And to a degree, at that point, you didn't know, like the way they were cutting it, they were kind of intercutting it with his brother showing up and getting like registered into prison. And they were kind of intercutting him getting to the like courthouse with the bail money and officially submitting it with like his cousin walking in the front. So like they were kind of also presenting it like that's still the not the, you know, kind of the goal, save his cousin. Like that's still the movie level goal up to that point, right? That's his character's goal, and basically he fails his movie level goal halfway through the movie.
He does.
And it's also a little interesting. I think what I found interesting was that he agreed to their deal so easily. I mean, I guess
he gives reasoning to it because he's already failed his goal, and he says it to Summer is one of the things is like basically escape and survive, like that, or self-preservation, I think is what the words he used.
Yeah.
So self-preservation is the most important thing of all else, and because of what they do with her at the drugs is why he decides, fuck it, let's take them all down. No, you're right. Yeah. This is super interesting. Like his movie level goal is answered halfway through the movie.
Yeah.
And he leaves. Like and another wrinkle to the whole thing is like he does well, I think when he's getting the money out of and for our listeners are like, you guys are jumping around. When he does get the money out initially out of the storage unit in the back of the police station, he still only takes what his original deal with them was. Like he takes only 10,000,
right?
And because he tried to 25,
right? Because and I think we missed that. You know, early he tries to basically play their game earlier. He basically says, "Hey, just give me." He basically, you know, he was bringing extra because they were gonna like buy a truck or whatever on the
buy
way.
A boat,
yeah,
or what?
Yes, yeah, and he's like, keep y'all can just have 10,000. Just give me what I need for my cousin.
No, you can have 25,000. Give me the 10 for the bell.
Sure. Right. And so he's like, I will walk away and you guys can run your shit. And it's like they were so disrespected by the fact that he would even offer. Like he was like the fact that you thought you could come in and negotiate.
Yeah.
Means fuck you.
Yeah. And he was and the reasoning, that's the real reason.
Right.
Their stupid reason was you're 3 minutes late from the time we or 2 minutes late from the time we agreed to meet to do this exchange, and fuck you sort of thing.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, which is that's a classic example of, you know, your hubris will come back and bite you in the ass.
Yeah, it's a great moment for Don Johnson. He really played this very unlikable character very well. That I think, like you said, also did have a layer, wasn't just one note, right? Had some layers to him.
But what's interesting, back to our halfway point, is that they give him all the money back, and they say, "Hey, go buy your boat, go buy your truck, and like here's all the money, and like just don't come back to this town."
They're basically bribing him to leave and not say anything about it.
Pretty much,
like, yeah. And that's the one part where I'm just like, I don't know if he would have so easily agreed. There's almost part of me that wished he said yes, but the plan all along was no.
From that moment on.
Because to me, it's like, I just think he seems like such a by the books military, like you just do the right thing kind of guy, that I think part of him just wouldn't stand the injustice of it all. You know, now maybe, you know, like you said, maybe it's self-preservation. Maybe his understanding is if I do this, I could very easily die. And he could, you know, if he does this and dies, he looks like the bad guy. He's this, you know, off the reservation military guy that just started attacking as a one-man army. You know, I guess there is some.
Well, there's that, and there's the thing too. It's like, I guess a different version of this is kind of like Jack Reacher, which I don't think you've seen. But Jack Reacher's guy walks into town. There's something shady happens, and he basically takes it upon himself to fix it. He typically wants to be left alone, but he still fixes it. Right? That's the classic, like, and that's like the classic story. I think our character Terry, he's kind of like, this happens everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
Me fixing this one town is not going to solve all the world's injustices. And the reason why I'm here died, and might as well leave now, because if I could risk my life stopping these guys because it's the right thing to do or whatever.
Yeah.
But
it won't change
anything. I'm not going to do this also Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday the rest of my life. Like, this is
right. And like, you know, it won't bring my cousin back. You know, I think there is some logic in that perspective for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then the thing that brings him back is that this lawyer, paralegal friend, who she shares a little bit about her life with him. Basically, she had her kids taken away because she was struggling with drugs. And so there's been battles with custody, and her just getting her life together has had a hard time. And they kind of develop a closer relationship. They never get it romantic, and I was appreciative of that.
Thank God.
I was glad that we didn't have to have that in this movie. You're right, actually not the place. But they did have good chemistry nonetheless. And so, but yeah, they find out, or they know pretty well that she's helping him, and they obviously take issue with that. And so they drug her basically in an attempt to like make sure she can't ever see her kids. Right? It's her punishment. Make her show up on dirty on a drug test, and that way, and no one will ever believe her. The cops drugged me while I was asleep in my house.
I mean, yeah, take her kids away and her job away at the same time, and discredit. I mean, literally, one of the worst things anyone could do to anyone. Yeah. One of the absolute worst things ever. A cop or a police, people in power that like you look to protect you. Right. That they could do to anybody. Period.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And so that at that point, Terry, she calls him because she's afraid also, and I think with right mind that they were trying to overdose her. They're probably trying to kill her. That'd be the easiest way to do it. She's a known drug addict. She overdosed. That's easy. Yeah. And so she calls him while she's like, I'm overdosing. And so he turns around to try to save her. She ends up being okay. But then at that point, he's not even like on the warpath yet, but then they noticed he came, and like he did the one thing they said, he came back. And so at this point, it's not his choice anymore. They are taking that as an act of aggression, and so they are coming at him with full force.
Well, they literally try to kill him because he drove back to save a woman from overdosing.
Yes.
So yeah, and so that's their mistake. They tried to kill him, and it doesn't work out well for them.
No.
Well, and I think from that point on, which that's about right at a little bit over the halfway point. I think it's right at halfway point. The rest of the movie now is navigating, finding information about what these cops have been doing, which again, to the listeners, we kind of told you ahead of time, so you had context the whole time. We don't find out all of these reasons until 3/4 the way into the movie. Right. And so the movie then becomes, we're going to get MacGuffin. We're trying to get these SD cards that has not only cam footage and those kind of things, but also just basically information regarding there's been this 90-day waiting period, and they're letting these prisoners go, all these kind of things, and why they're doing that, and how it ties into the money and the town, whatever. And so it becomes that, and it becomes a cat and mouse game. I think this stuff is kind of the most boring parts of the movie. I think the first part where he's showing up the town, getting read the riot act, but then in turn giving it back to them, playing the game as best he can against the ticking clock. All those things I thought were more interesting, and I still enjoy the second half. Yeah. I do think the first half is stronger.
I agree, and I think probably it is. It's like it's not as personal anymore. It is, but it's like
it's more.
It is a little more typical movie at that point.
It is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I think it's worth talking about the end. That again, I don't think anyone dies at all.
I think to give a little context real quick.
Yeah.
There's, I think, earlier in the movie when they're going through the police station or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's Summer that tells him this, but there's someone that is giving them inside information anonymously, and they kind of codename him is it Serpico or
Serpico? Yeah.
Serpico.
Yeah.
And so throughout the movie, this woman that you mentioned earlier with Don Johnson, like probably the rookie, or it felt like the rookie. It felt like
she was so new she couldn't be involved in the dirty stuff kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. And so I think she's also the only black
the only black officer. Yes.
And so it also kind of makes that connection a little bit there too. And there's kind of like this, like, I see what they're doing and you're black. There was that in there too, those tones, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you automatically think she's a good guy, or she's going to kind of help him out later.
Right.
And so they think she's Serpico. We get to the end of the movie, it turns out the guy who rammed him in the beginning off the street and took the money from the beginning is Serpico.
Yeah.
And when that happened, I was like, oh, that's actually pretty smart. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I started retroactively thinking about the movie, and I was like, I don't think Roy, I'm gonna call him Roy from The Office.
Yeah.
I don't think he's there throughout all the rest of the movie where bad shit's happening. Really, like I don't think so.
Yeah,
I
he
think
isn't
it's-
really, and I think I could be wrong, but I can't. Does he not? Does he not tell the chief at one point? Let's just give him the money, like before
I don't
all
remember.
the bat. I feel like at one point he is like shows either somewhat remorse or just like let's just give him a break kind of thing. So I do
was
think they
him-
set that up just barely in that way, but not in not in enough way that was ever expected.
It was him and Don Johnson who dropped him off at the hospital, right?
It was him
And
then, yes. But
with the money. But there was like this second cop that was the guy who tried to kill him when he came back to town,
Right.
who was kind of leading. He was like, you thought Roy was like the physical bad guy presence.
Right.
It's actually the second cop who
Right.
ends up being the dickhead who tries to kill him, who tries to like,
yes,
"F it, we're gonna
he does
kill
shoot
Yeah.
him. He gets shot.
He does shoot him, yes.
towards the end. But yes,
And so anyway, I think that's pretty interesting, and it's a good swerve there to get, especially, and it also plays against expectation where you think it's going to be what appears to be the newer rookie cop, and it sounds like she's actually in on it, and she's she didn't.
she
fight it or
ends
anything.
up he tries to trust her and she betrays him. Right.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the
Yeah.
other thing too, I forgot that happens is Marston, who is Roy's character, he gets shot, and like for a second there, the plan is kill Terry, kill Aaron Pierre, and then say that he killed Marston, let him bleed out,
Yeah,
just blame his so it's like very I'm trying to think of the word, like just brutal. No, no empathy. There's they're willing to like let one of their own die in order to have a reason that they killed this one.
Well, here's where it gets even more interesting.
Mm.
And I would say this is where it starts. Like, I think when you first text me this, she's like, I'm really curious as to what you think about the end of it.
Yes. Yeah.
So from there, he gets Marston. Terry does. They get in the car. There was Summer. I think Summer is drugged up again, I guess, in the back seat or whatever. They do it to her again. They're
trying to make her OD. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they're on the run, right? And it looks like there's just no way out. The cop car's tire's been blown out. They can't hit max speed. And there's kind of like this understanding amongst all three of them that this is the end, right? There's just really nothing we can do. And like, fuck it, let's just go out swinging kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the cops who just tried to kill them end up leading the way to them, to the hospital, right? Isn't that what happens here?
No, it's the state police.
It's the state police?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I thought this was some of the cops that were trying to kill them.
No. So
Well,
what happens is
I thought this movie was super interesting.
It still is. It's still, I mean, so they get him to turn on the siren, right? Because they're like, if you turn on the siren, it records the last 3 minutes of dash footage and then keeps recording. So you have proof.
Yeah.
Right. And then, yes, when they're, so let's see, I'm right here. Like,
I could have swore that was some of the
maybe you're
cops.
right. Let's see. It says Marston tells Terry to activate a police siren, saving the previous 3 minutes of dash footage, and walks Terry through administering Narcan to Summer. The three flee in the cruiser with police in pursuit. When ordered to do a pit maneuver, Sims takes out Burns' vehicle instead and detains him.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So they basically turn the other cops kind of wise up to a degree.
Yes. Yeah. So yes. Okay. I felt pretty stupid there for a second.
No,
so,
you're right.
yes,
You're right.
What happens is these cops
They
who
do
were just-
say police state are incoming. That is
they're
like
incoming.
Said. Yes.
Yeah, but so essentially these cops at the very end realize Marston's bleeding out for whatever reason that they're like, even though this is really going to like totally end our lives in a big bad way.
To a degree, it makes it out that we're all in on it. Really, that it was the chief. It was Burns.
I think it was not that. I think it was that because this movie also has another theme to it, and it's I don't know how to phrase it, but it's about having a code. This movie, so because Terry definitely has a code, right?
Sure.
And it's really demonstrated in like he makes the deal and he still tries to give them the money after all the shit they've done to him, and they don't deserve a single dollar from his money.
Right.
But I think here at the end, it's cops are like, our brother is dying, and instead of letting him die because he has a family, we're going to do what's right because our brotherhood of cops is more important than our reputation.
Yeah. To me,
that's what I was taking it.
And you may be right. To me, it was kind of the impression that because when the discussions that got blunt happened when it was Terry versus Don Johnson, and it was like basically them not talking in code anymore. Basically, they're like, I know who you are, like all this shit. There weren't all the other cops around. It was only ever Don Johnson, Roy, or that last cop Burns, who was kind of the final dickhead, right? Like those were the only three that were ever actually close when any of those like real conversations happened. And so my wondering is it like, yes, it kind of painted them as this whole department's bad. This whole department's rotten. And while I'm sure they were aware of the legal side of things that were happening, and maybe they were turning a blind eye, right? Maybe they were willing to turn a blind eye. Oh, well, it's drug money. Who gives a shit if we're doing it a little under the table? It's bad guys, right? But maybe it is that once they saw that Burns was willing to let, like you said, one of them die, and that he orders them to do a pit maneuver on them, which is a very dangerous maneuver and can kill people very easily. It's happened in Arkansas several times where state police have pulled pit maneuvers on people and killed them. And so like, it to me, there's this element of, is it that they were like, oh shit, this is worse than we thought. These guys, these guys have gone bad, and we I don't know. I feel like it maybe could be interpreted either way. I'm not sure either.
Maybe because clearly the I'm gonna keep calling it the rookie. She knew, and she's the one who actually detains Don Johnson at the end. And then also after they shoot Marston, they're still trying to kill them. They're trying to kill all those cops are trying to kill Terry and Marston.
Yeah,
so it's like they're trying to kill them, and so it's during the chase. This is why the movie, I think, does fail a little bit.
Sure,
is that we don't see that change in the cops. We just see the
reaction. It's kind of left us here where we don't exactly know.
Yes,
exactly what happened. I mean, even then, you could rationalize. Well, the chief told them that this guy's coming to kill them. Well, the cops would shoot at him. Yeah, they'd shoot. Doesn't matter if they knew about it or not. If the chief told them that, they're going to shoot at him. So there is still a way that they weren't as in on it as Don Johnson and everyone else. But maybe I think you're right. That's and basically the movie ends like right after this. Like basically it's like them in a hallway, right? Is the last scene him and Summer?
He after he drops off Marston, he walks out there and rips out the dash cam and sits back down in the hallway.
Yeah, which is cool. So, I like that.
Yeah.
I did
and
like this.
He holds it like
I'm not.
To take it from my hands.
Yes, I do like that as a moment, and that's a cool kind of badass. Like I'm not taking anything to chance with you shitheads.
Yeah,
but
100%.
It's like credits roll. That's credits. Yeah. And so it I think you're right in that's why it feels so rushed and kind of just over before you know it. Yeah. Is because we don't exactly know, and it makes sense even while I'm like, there's even a version of this where it's like someone told them the state police are coming, and so we better get our act together because mom and dad are coming home. You know what I mean?
We're all going to play it. There's like they all come at the same place, same time, and that's the classic thing is that Don Johnson's like he's the bad guy, and it's like it's that moment, right? It's state cops thinking that Terry's the bad guy because Don Johnson, but then something happens where a hologram starts playing and it shows how bad Don Johnson's been the whole time.
Right.
That's the classic thing.
Exactly.
And there's a big part of me, that's kind of how I wish the movie, something like that,
I think
where we
you're
got
right.
closure.
I think we needed one more beat. I think we needed one more beat of conflict. I think we needed one more moment.
It's cliche.
You're right,
that's why they didn't want to do it, but I think it would have made it feel better.
Well, it is because at the end of the day, the protagonist doesn't do anything that directly saves him, right? It seems that the decision and the people that decide to take care of him essentially happen off screen, and then he's safe. It's not like they.
Yeah, I'm never a fan. I've said this vocally that the protagonist does not stop the antagonist.
Right. Looking at you, Indiana Jones 5.
And now Rebel Ridge. I think that it's a mistake not having Don Johnson and Terry at the same. I keep using actor names.
Terry, names. I know.
So
if you've seen the movie, you're following.
Yeah,
I know you.
It's a mistake not having them do one final confrontation to do something. You want to see Don Johnson arrested while Terry is watching him get arrested.
At the end of the day, he's just looking kind of worried, right? Like that's the last shot of Don Johnson, him just looking.
Yeah,
worried.
The movie.
Like, oh no, how am I going to explain this?
It's easy to make the connections of like, okay, he has the footage. Don Johnson's been reprimanded. Marston's at the hospital.
We did kind of want it would have been nice.
No. We know what's going to happen, at least from what the storytellers are telling us. But sometimes it's better to give the audience that kind of closure on camera.
I agree. I think that's what it needed. Honestly, I think is that. And I wonder, because at the end of the day, when we're talking about what this message, what is this movie saying about law enforcement or any of those systems? Because it has a lot to say about it, I think. And kind of the message is that, yes, there are bad apples that take advantage of a broken system to hurt people. But by and large, the system is okay. Is kind of what I get from the ending of this movie. The state police come in. The justice is going to be found through the system. I mean, that's the only way this can happen. He's got the evidence. He's going to have to go through the courts of some sort, or through a court martial, or whatever that would be. So essentially, we're seeing him trust in the system at the end, the wider system, not the local system, but kind of saying, okay, well, I'm going to make sure I have my evidence, but I'm going to let the rest play out by the book to a degree.
Yeah, I think overall, I agree with that assessment in reality too. I think obviously there's nuances to all of it, but I think it's kind of like the people like they crap on the word democracy or whatever. And there's the famous, I can't think which president said it. It says it's the it might not be good, but it's the best one out there, the best form of government, or best form of a system to govern people. And so I think it's kind of like a similar situation here, right? Where there's obviously flaws in the system. You can always do better, but overall, I kind of think this too. I think most cops, most people in law enforcement probably start out and they're doing this for the right reasons.
Sure.
But of course,
there are some that don't. I believe that.
I
also believe that.
Yes, and there's a lot that start with good intentions that end up the other way too.
And there's a lot of times where they're put in situations they shouldn't be in, and they're having to react to situations that they honestly aren't trained for, and that
which is another conversation.
But I think all this to say is that, like, I agree with you. I kind of agree with the take of this movie. It makes me wonder, is it that take that kind of influenced the decision to not have one final kind of fuck you moment to Don Johnson's character? Right?
Maybe.
That's what it kind of read to me as. It was like that, this kind of is a weird kind of just it ends, but it did feel a little bit on purpose. Like not.
No, I do think it's on purpose. I think you're right. I think having a moment like we talked about, we wanted, where you have Don Johnson get his comeuppance, right, in front of people or dies or whatever.
Essentially off, not through the system, in a way that would be
I'm saying
vigilante justice, right?
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah, if we got
we want the vigilante justice,
which is what we want as audience members. This is where it gets complicated.
I know.
If we got that, then ironically, are we any better, the audience members, are we any better than the thing that we're upset about?
Well, I think if we had gotten that, it kind of would have undermined a lot of the movie, and it would have kind of undermined Aaron Pierre's character. I don't think, I kind of agree that he wouldn't do that, right?
I did say kill him at one point, but I meant
there's a version of this where they doesn't have to kill him, but it's still kind of a fuck you, right? Like
it's still a fuck you. You got caught, and I don't need him to die. I'm just saying, I personally, this is aside from what we're talking about, would have liked to be. He's the one that, because of him, and he is indirectly, but he's the one that you see him go down, and Terry's there to watch it. And that feels good.
Like, even if it was just the state police chief, catching him in the act or something. Yeah.
I mean, I don't get me wrong. I'd like a good haymaker thrown in there,
of course,
somewhere.
To be honest, I was kind of like, at least till like cold clock him.
Yeah,
at least he'll just give him a black eye kind of thing.
Knock him out.
But
cold.
There is a degree of like, I get why they didn't do that, and I think it does strengthen the message of what they're kind of talking about here, that they didn't.
We're talking about it in an interesting way.
That's right. It sparks conversation in a way. It's not as a moviegoer. It's not the most satisfying ending.
I still would have done it.
It's still kind of, it leaves something. It's like, oh man, I was kind of hope
Yeah.
it kind of like it's like it leaves you a little frustrated. But
There's this. I mean, we've talked about this in the pod before, and this could become the bite us in the ass years from now. I don't know, but there's something cool and fun, or at least we've been told it's cool and fun. I think it's cool and fun when you watch even like good guys like Lethal Weapon. When you see guys, they're going outside the system and they're doing like they're causing destruction, and like the captain's like, "You caused $6,000 in property damage," and the guy's like, "We're trying to catch the bad guys." There's something
what's the
fun
class
and cool about all this.
There is,
about that part of it.
there is a but to a degree, because I think these people have existed, right? I mean, like, what's that classic line? It's like, damn it, you're can't follow rules, but you're a hell of a detective. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah, well,
like,
hey, the other side
the
of
Neuer
this,
side of it.
yeah. So that's the Lethal Weapon. Like these guys, they got charm and charisma, and we still like them at the end of the day.
Right.
The other side of that is the French Connection, which we just
I mean, isn't LA Confidential a little bit in this way?
That movie is super interesting because we can talk about that movie too in a second. But French Connection is like
you're right.
Like, it is that same thing, but it's like
he doesn't play by the rules, but he gets results.
But it's gross though. When you watch it, it feels gross, and you're like, "Oh, this isn't like this is not the fun Lethal Weapon version of this where we're rooting for the like you want Gene Hackman to win because he's ultimately it was good for bad guys, but Gene Hackman's a true wrecking ball where he doesn't care if innocent people get hurt too. Mel Gibson and them are doing this, and they actually care about people, and they're also fun to watch, and it's charming and all this stuff. LA Confidential is super interesting because it's two different things in the beginning. Russell Crowe is like kind of the more corrupt side, and it's not Guy. Is it Guy Pearce? I always get his name wrong.
Yeah, it's
Guy Pearce. He is like the by the book thing. By the end of it, and it's kind of most movies do. Like they converge, right? And Guy Pearce ends up kind of breaking the rules some, and he ends up trying to stop the captain at the end of the movie outside the system. And Russell Crowe is playing a little bit more by the book. And I would say Guy Pearce makes a bigger change than Russell Crowe does at the end, which also has its own interesting message. Also made 1998, I believe, 97.
Yeah, but even that, I wouldn't say it like it doesn't. I wouldn't say the movie explicitly condones their violent stuff, right?
I don't know. I think it kind of glamorizes their off book at the end of it.
This is an interesting discussion, even at just like a society level of like what kind of stories we tell and what kind of characters we tell them with, and like it makes me think that like we do like the story of the people that don't play by the rules but get results, that go outside of the system. And I think part of it is because it feels real, because we are involved in so many systems that feel hindering sometimes. And so the idea of going outside of all these red tape bullshit emails and meetings just to get what needs to be done and help the people that need to be helped, because they're always heroes in this, right? They're always helping or getting the bad guy or, doing what needs to be done for the greater good of the city or the public or whatever.
Yes.
It's interesting because I feel like we don't get those stories with cops anymore, but we definitely do with superheroes. And I wonder if that's a safer place to tell that kind of story, because we're not, I think there is an issue to a certain degree with certain people that grew up idolizing that kind of cop and want to become that kind of cop. And that's maybe not the healthiest thing to emulate, to be a good cop, is these people that are willing to break the rules to get what they think is the job done. You know what I mean?
It's complicated. Yeah, this is where it gets really complicated. This is where we could get our ass chewed out later down the line. Yeah. But because here's one of my answers. I probably, amongst your friend group, have seen more 80s action movies than anyone else you know. And I've watched these movies repeatedly. I have played violent video games since I was a child. I was playing God of War when it came out, when I was 8 or 9, 10, whatever it was. I have no interest in hurting anybody. I have no interest. I'm a pretty by the book guy. Like, I'm super paying your taxes, not trying to go over the speed limit. I mean, really trying to follow the system that I'm in, right? Yeah. I have no desire to break upon that. Obviously, that's temperament, cultural, geography, all these things, genetic. So I don't know. I see the connection.
Yeah.
And I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
But I also think that some of the people who are looking at these, I don't know.
It's not like you can blame bad cops on 80s cop movies. That's not how it works. And but you cannot draw a straight line from, oh, we make movies about cops that break the rules and get results, to this is why we have all these problems in the police force today. No, that's not how it is.
I agree.
But we do know that media influences culture. We do know that the people that grew up watching Law and Order, which is all glorified propaganda, the cops are never in the wrong on Law and Order. They never do anything wrong. They can trick the person into giving them info, and they were in the right for doing that. You know what I mean? And so that influences. I mean, I grew up with that. That was kind of cops are always the good guys. Cops never break the rules. Cops, if they're breaking the rules, it's because they need to, right? Like that. That impression, right? And so, I think there is, to a degree, it's like, you're right. We can't lay that these societal problems at the feet of these movies. We can also say that there is some impact. We know that violent video games don't make kids into violent people, but we do know it desensitizes them. We do know there is a relation, you know what I mean? And so I think it is interesting. I just think to come back to Rebel Ridge, I have a lot of respect for what they decided to do with this kind of movie, with these characters telling a story about police corruption. And I think it's cool that I don't know. I just think it's a very different depiction of justice and law enforcement than I think we've ever really seen before, in a way. You know what I mean?
I don't know if ever really seen. Sure. I just think that, but I do. I can't say that, but I do think in our current climate, which right now, honestly, at this exact moment of recording, it's not a super hot button issue today. It was
in recent years,
a year or two ago, right? Yeah. We got a lot going on today, so it's not at the top of the list. But I think it's interesting that they decided to make this movie and have this movie come out at this time, and to skirt that. I know we talk, when we're writing stuff all the time about these issues,
right?
And at the same time, if they had decided to have him clock Don Johnson at the end and he got his comeuppance, I would have liked the movie better.
Yeah, I agree. I would have been more entertained. I would have had a more satisfying conclusion. It would have been more satisfying conclusion.
Yeah, and here's the big thing too: is we're talking about the themes of this movie and whether it works and how it relates to society and what it's saying about society. This movie is not going to change.
No, in fact, I think it's more of an interesting. I think Hollywood. There's people that say, well, Hollywood's making society this way, or Hollywood's poisoning society. Hollywood's just a reflection of society. Hollywood is just a reflection of what gets butts in seats. And so, and if Hollywood is trying to get the most butts in seats, they're going to try to appeal to what everyone thinks is right now, not what they think that their audience should think. Hollywood wants your money, not to make you a better person. Sorry, or what they think is a better person or a worse person.
I don't 100% agree with that. I think that's the top. Money is the top thing. I do think there are people in Hollywood who have lots of money, who don't need money, who do have an agenda for sure.
Sure, but I doubt those are the people at Warner Brothers and at these giant the mainstream blockbuster movies. I don't think anyone's. Are there people there that have an agenda?
There's been somewhat of an agenda.
I think there is an agenda to appear progressive, because they think that will ensure their profitability long term. But at the end of the day, I think that only has to do with profits. I don't think there's a moral police at Warner Brothers level saying
at the top. I think you're 100% correct. I think the people underneath that who aren't making the final decision, they think they have a moral obligation to do certain things. Whether that's right or wrong is another conversation.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. It's not,
but I still think at the end of the day, they're going to have to. The people that say, "Can this movie get made?" and we're giving final approval to it, they just want money, right? And so I think Rebel Ridge is more of this is more of a reflection of the common think of a more modern thinking on police, law enforcement. In fact, we both just said it. This is we kind of agree. This is a kind of a realistic reflection of the system. There are bad apples, and there are people, that bad apples get together and they do really bad things, and locally can be really corrupt. But at the end of the day, we kind of trust at least that the system is trying to do the right thing. And so, like, I think it's more of like
I don't know. I don't know if that's an actual representation of our entire culture. I think it's actually a very moderate and more independent kind of way of thinking.
Yeah, that's what. But I think most people are moderate and independent. I think most of the opinions you hear online are the vocal minority.
Right, and so I think it's interesting for sure.
It does not feel like this movie has a political leaning. I'll say that. I didn't feel
not really. No. Yeah. I don't really either.
And I credit that for it. I'm glad.
For sure, I agree. But I will say that to tie back to what I was saying at the very beginning of this last bill was that we're talking about these things as this movie is not going to change the culture.
No.
I'm glad that it's smart to have themes and to reflect important issues. Those things, just because it's right for storytelling. At the end of the day, what I care about is, am I entertained?
Sure.
If I think about something differently, or if or whatever, at the end of it, that's great.
Yeah.
I don't need that in a movie.
Right.
But for me as an audience member, it would have been cool to have just a little more closure, at least.
I completely agree.
For the end of the movie. So,
I think me as a moviegoer, as just a pure looker for entertainment, it's like a 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
As like a member of society that's not just that, it's maybe like an 8.5 ish. I don't know.
Sure.
Just because I feel like it's doing something cool, and I think it's one where it's like, I just think it's just an interesting take on the subject.
It is interesting, just even by nature of its midpoint and how the goal changes, and then the ending is super interesting, especially now that you know that some of the bad cops are the ones who drive them to the hospital. Yeah, which is again unclear. It's unclear.
It is. The ending is the weakest part of the film. There's no doubt. There's no doubt.
And it's not because it's bad. It's because it's. I mean, maybe partly because it's bad, because
it's confusing. It's a little confusing. Yeah, it's confusing. It is. And so, which muddies the waters a little bit. Anyway, I'm really glad though. I'm really glad this movie came, like, we did not plan on reviewing this conversation. We weren't even knowing it was coming out. But it provided a good podcast episode.
Well, ultimately, if our listeners haven't yet, they should go watch The French Connection, LA Confidential, Lethal Weapon, and then now Rebel Ridge.
That would be a very interesting, study. There's totally an interesting, academic research paper that examines the Hollywood depiction of law enforcement. Like, you pick a movie from the 80s, a couple movies from the 90s, and a couple movies from the 10s. I mean,
honestly, that is 70s, 80s, 90s, and then 2000.
You just need some aughts and mid-aught, couple of that's like a academic thesis paper waiting to happen. In fact, 100%. I'm sure it's already happened. Just the more recent ones will have Rebel Ridge in it. That's the only difference.
That's true. Yeah, I'm trying to think now what would be the aughts and the. I mean, maybe it's superhero films. I'm trying to think more. Jason Bourne. Oh, that's it's spy. I mean, I'm trying to think of something that's deal with law enforcement.
I mean, you could go Law and Order. Law and Order was at its peak in those days.
Yeah,
so if you wanted
I'm trying to go.
dip
I'm trying to go
TV.
movie though. I'm trying to go movie.
Okay, yeah, cop movies in the middle in the aughts.
I got to think about it.
I know they're there.
Of course. I mean,
iRobot.
That's it. That's the one. That's the one.
It's a cop movie.
It's actually a 9.
Fantastic.
It's a 9 out of 10 movie. Because the ending is not that. Because his one-liner at the end is not that good. That's why it's a 9 out of 10. 9.5 out of 10. He says, "Oh, you have so got to die," and then kills him. I'm like,
yeah, that is
Will Smith. What a awful! It's not his fault, but what an awful one-liner. Sonny played by.
It might have been his fault. Maybe he ad-libbed it.
Maybe he did. Sonny, played by Alan Tudyk, is fantastic in that movie.
It's like Will Smith at the peak of his powers and acting ability in a sci-fi action thriller mystery. I mean, it's fucking incredible. It's so fun.
You remember the PlayStation Portable, the first one, and
Yeah.
that the UMDs, the disc. That was my first UMD. Was iRobot. Fun facts for everybody.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fun.
Anyway,
Yeah, it
there
was
you
one
go.
of the like few movies like I owned on DVD. I barely owned any movies as a
Dude, it had
in
a,
high
it had,
school.
it had a translucent. I haven't thought about this in 20 years. A translucent slip cover. So when you pushed it down, it was like a translucent, and it revealed more of a. Anyway, that's
really cool.
unrelated, but iRobot does rule, and
And it is a
Shia
cop
LaBeouf's in
movie,
it.
but it's probably not
It
the
is a
one
cop
that,
movie.
that
Probably
we're
not the
thinking
one
of.
we
We're thinking
need to
of
put-
like what cops in modern day. Oh, Crash. Crash.
No.
It's a
Not
shitty
that one.
movie, but it is a depiction of like cops at that early.
Yeah,
cops.
I'll text you some good answers as soon as this
Hey,
meeting is
you know
over.
what, listeners? If you can think of any really good
There we
middle
go.
aught or like aught, or even like I think we need some like 2010 aughts selections too, outside of Bad Boys. Write in at bit.ly/241mail and let us know what are the cop movies. We're really looking for movies that depict cops like that are supposed to be a realistic take. Now, let's say that are intentionally taking a realistic.
Clearly, you've never been at Miami before, Daniel. As I say, Bad Boys 2 is 2002, baby. So
I'm not saying that one. I'm saying maybe the later ones where they get more ridiculous. I don't know. Anyway, write into us. Tell us what are these cop movies that we're missing out on. bit.ly/241mail.
And if you can't find us at our bit.ly, you can always find us in the comment section below, youtube.com/@241studios. Again, best place to consume all the content. Daniel, it was fun talking about Rebel Ridge and talking about just cop movies in general. Yeah, I can't wait to figure out the answer for these other two movies for these two different decades. I'm going to do some hard research fast as soon as this podcast is done recording.
I believe you.
Pick it. Anyway, it's fun talking to you. I anticipate going this long.
But it was a good discussion. The discussion demanded it. Yeah.
My name is Donovan Thompson.
I'm Daniel Wingfield.
And we have spoken.